Hey everybody, welcome to another week of Wrestling with Wrestling. We're going to talk about WWE and whatever else pops into our little wrestling fan minds for the next 90 minutes or so. Joining me as always, the great Doc Gregory. How you going? How you doing, Doc?
Doing well, da 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 da. It's the motherfucking DOC, the dog. Da 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 da. I'm talking wrestling with my big friend Steve.
Nice. Did you just write that?
I always do that first part, that da 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 da, the motherfucking DOC, because it fits
Yeah.
really perfect. But then I always start something. I've done, our friend Rob, and I'm hanging with the ROBND.
I like that. He's a man of many talents.
Well, I grew up with Weird Al Yankovic, so being able to flip lyrics really quick, I have that ability to do it too. So most people who listened to heavy metal back in the day and grew up idolizing them wanted to play guitar. Well, over in that corner sits my accordion. And I got plenty of Hawaiian shirts in that closet over there.
So, in other words, if Al ever needs someone to assume the crown when he decides to retire, you can just step right in there.
Absolutely.
Well,
From Weird Al to Tom Lehrer to Alan Sherman to all those great novelty songwriters, man. I mean, I've grown up with them and I've collected them all my life. So my novelty song collection is massively extensive. Dr. Demento, oh my God.
yeah, you're a Renaissance man of parody songs.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get into Monday Night Raw from this week because I know you mentioned before we went on the air you have some strong thoughts about it, and I have some interesting things kind of knocking around in my brain about it too. I mean, I don't think it was a bad show, but it was a very confusing show in many ways, and an irritating one in some respects. We'll get into that.
Yes.
Raw was live this week from Austin, Texas. They were at the University of Texas, and the opening promo was pretty much everybody affiliated with the Authority. They all came out in a big group like the NWO or the Horsemen used to. And Triple H was there, Stephanie McMahon, Randy Orton, Seth Rollins, and Kane. They all came into the ring together, and immediately they started with a really hard sell for the WWE Network. Triple H mentioned that you can get the WWE Network for only $9.99. He repeated it over and over again like he was trying to get it over as a catchphrase, which he kind of did by the end of the promo. The crowd was yelling $9.99 along with him when he would say it. So, I mean, that bit worked, I guess, if that's what he wanted to do. But the good thing about this promo is that he actually ran down what the card was for SummerSlam so far, which they haven't been very good about recently. They used to have, like, I remember back when I was a kid, they would always have like the pay-per-view report where it was like a separate segment where they would run down all the matches in like 5 minutes just so you knew what all the matches were. They don't. They're not so.
I'm Todd Pettengill, everybody.
Yeah, right. Todd Pettengill or Sean Mooney.
Sean Mooney. Yeah. Who's the fat guy? Kelly. Kevin Kelly.
Yeah. Oh, who is the play-by-play guy for Ring of Honor now?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and is actually a lot better than he was when he was in the WWE. Because I never thought he was that great at all in WWE, but he's actually gotten a lot better as the play-by-play guy of Ring of Honor. So Triple H runs down the card and he pushes the network, saying with every match, you can see this match for only $9.99 on the WWE Network. And it's almost as if they were turning the network heel. I mean, Triple H is the heel figurehead of the company. He was giving the promo acting like a total, like, smarmy asshole and mentioning the network. Even the commentators were talking about how obnoxious he was being about pushing the network. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? I mean, the big wrestling story this week, other than wrestling shit, has been, the business story that continues to go down with the WWE, where the WWE Network, the subscription numbers are way below what they had hoped they would be. They're not even to the break-even point yet. Apparently, they only gained something like 60,000 new subscribers since April. I mean, it's just bad news. And this is how they choose to push the network, by having the top heel in the company come out and basically act like a dick when he mentions the network. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. What did you think?
I honestly thought that every time I turned the volume up to see what was going on, that I was watching Raw in German. because see, every time I turned the volume up, they were like 999, 999, 999. I could have smacked JBL for holding up signs, and they really just shoved it down our throats all night long. It doesn't make sense. See, you have this. You could cut your dumbass promos a lot shorter. That gives you the ability to maybe put a commercial in during your programming for the network instead of having to, beat it down with a fucking hammer to all of us on commentating. And you know how I feel about not commentating about the matches and doing other shit. I mean, and also it's like, who are you trying to sell it to? The theoretical motherfuckers that might be watching your show, or everybody that has really watched your show since the network has started, and they know it's $9.99. The people who go to your website know that it's $9.99. Hell, I don't know. My computer knows I like the WWE because any website I go to, there's always a little side advertisement for, do you like wrestling? How about the network? $9.99 a month.
Yeah, I get the same thing. Well, it's like, I don't really think that they're not meeting their projections because people don't know about it. I mean, I think a lot of people know about the network, they just haven't bought it because they don't think it's worth it, or they're just not watching wrestling. Like people forget, and I know. I mean, I'm sure that a lot of people working for WWE haven't forgotten, but I mean, it's easy to forget that there were a lot of people who, let's say, were big WCW fans. And when WCW went out of business in 2001, they didn't start watching Raw. They just stopped watching.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're just not into wrestling at all anymore. And those people are gone. And those are some people who might, if they still like wrestling, they just haven't been watching it, who might be nostalgic and might want to, check out some of the old stuff on the WWE network. And I assume eventually, pretty soon, they're going to start adding episodes of Nitro because they've got this Monday Night War series starting up pretty soon, and that would just make sense to start putting up old Nitro episodes as you do this Monday Night War series. So they might be able to lure some of those people back, but they're not going to do it by having Triple H cut a promo on Raw and acting like a jackass. I mean, because those people aren't even watching. All they're doing now is just pissing off the people that do watch their show.
Mm-hmm. Like, can we get to some wrestling? I would really appreciate that. And speaking of getting to wrestling, I wasn't all that happy of how it started off when they finally got around to the wrestling. But going back to that Monday Night War thing, I have the DVD of the Monday Night War. So I haven't really paid much attention to the advertisements going on, but from what I can take from it, is actually going to be like a special series show that is not what's on my DVD, but it's just other people talking, interviews and stuff, and more to do with the Monday Night War than what the DVD really offered.
Yeah, it's going to be. I saw they showed the first episode of it as a preview like a month ago, I think, and then it's supposed to start like as a series, I think at the end of this month or the start of September or something. And yeah, it's like it's the same deal sort of as that Monday Night War DVD, but it's just a lot more detailed. It's not just like an hour about the whole thing. It's like an hour about a particular segment of it. So I don't know how many episodes they're doing, but it's a lot more detailed than just the DVD documentary. So let's talk about when the wrestling got started here on Raw, because Randy Orton cuts a promo. He actually just takes the microphone and decides to talk about wrestling. And he talks about Roman Reigns, and then Roman Reigns comes out into the crowd, and he's got a microphone like in the crowd, and him and Orton kind of have a back and forth, and Roman Reigns says, Triple H is talking about how he wants to give everybody a deal for the WWE Network. Well, Roman Reigns has an even better deal because he'll come down to the ring and beat Randy Orton's ass for free. And instead, Triple H books Roman Reigns in a match starting right now versus Kane, and it's a last man standing match, and that's the opening match of Raw. Right?
Like, wait, after a real long-winded promo, you're going to give me a last man standing match. Really? That is not the way you start off a wrestling show. They got to be quick, hot, to the point, and get that crowd going, not just drag them out, and bore them to death. It was a good match. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed the match between those guys. They gave us something a little bit more hardcore to open up the show. But I just don't think the placement of that match really belonged at the top of the list.
Yeah, I think you might have something there, because I actually didn't think it was that great of a match. But I think if it had been maybe later in the show, I would have liked it better. I think you're right. Like having a match like that early in the show, where just by necessity it has a more deliberate pace, because the winner is the guy who has the other guy go down for a 10 count. So you can't have like a quick finish to that match. Yeah, it's not a very well placed match, and it just felt like a random gimmick match. Like, why are Kane and Roman Reigns having a last man standing match? They haven't even really been working together. Like, last man standing should be a blow off, but they're just like, fuck it, we're just gonna do last man standing.
Just out of nowhere for no reason whatsoever. It might have something to do with what Kane's up to, and we'll get to that later. But it might, they might have just thrown that in there to kickstart wherever Kane's going.
Yeah, well, hopefully they have something planned. Hopefully they have, some idea of where they're going. But yeah, it was just an odd placement on the show for a last man standing match, and just an odd choice to just. It's like they just picked a gimmick out of a fishbowl and said, "Fuck it, we'll just do last man standing."
And of course, Roman, busted his head open, had to get some staples up in there.
Had to get staples, yeah, yeah. Roman Reigns won relatively cleanly. I mean, it's a last man standing, so there was hardcore stuff going on, but there was no cheating or running interference or anything. He speared Kane, and Kane didn't get up for the 10 count, and that was the finish. So they keep pushing Roman Reigns, make him look strong. Although I wonder if it would have been better for him if they had just had a regular match and he just pinned Kane.
I think it would have been. I think for a last man standing match, it didn't belong there. But since they put it there, I don't think it lasted long enough. For a last man standing match, I think it should have been a lot longer than it was. Kane looked strong. He had his moments, but to go down that quick, from being the monster Kane, I thought it made him look weak. And again, that might just be something to do with the storyline that is coming around the corner, because I think that's what he was playing off too later on in the show, that he just can't do it anymore.
Yeah, because they had that backstage segment where he takes his mask off again and gives it to Stephanie for what seems like the 50th time this year. I think it's only the second time, but it just feels like a lot. Now, next up was actually, even though it was not a live segment at all, and it featured two guys who were not shown live on the show, it's one of my favorite parts of the show this week, and it was the video package hyping Cena versus Lesnar at SummerSlam. I really, really liked this. I thought it was so well done. It looked like something that you would see to hype a sporting event, like a big boxing match or a UFC fight. They had Brock sitting down, talking to the camera, and just really sounded like a badass. Said he's not here, he's not a wrestler, he's a fighter, he's like a wrecking machine. He enjoys making people feel pain, like all the fucking evil Brock Lesnar shit. But he said it like totally straight, just to the camera, not trying to be not doing like a tough guy voice or a badass, just being really calm. And then they had Cena kind of doing the same thing, talking about how he's going to beat Brock, and he never backs down, and he never gives up. And I just thought it was great. Both guys looked like they wanted to win, like the winner of the match mattered. It didn't feel like a sports entertainment performance. It felt like a fight, like a wrestling match. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, I was watching an interview. I only got about halfway through it, but a gentleman, I guess, was interviewing Paul Heyman because of his upcoming DVD, which I must have.
Yeah.
But Heyman himself said that he was very proud of Brock's promo from Monday night. He thought it was really good and well done, and the best thing he's ever done. Because as everybody is aware, Brock Lesnar, that's the reason why he needs Paul Heyman. He's not a great talker. But he delivered everything well. I love the fact that he was allowed to use explicitives, but they beeped it out. But you know what he's saying. I was like, you just dropped an F-bomb, Brock. But man, I like that about him, because if you know anything about Brock Lesnar, he's a bit of an asshole. He on his way out the very first time, he was giving the crowd the finger. In UFC, the night he won the belt, he gave the crowd the finger. He downgraded the sponsors.
Yeah.
He definitely is. Brock Lesnar is what he says he is. He is a beast incarnate. And he will rip you from limb to limb, and he doesn't give a shit about you either. he's doing it for himself. So
yeah.
So, look, a wrestler that's honest.
Yeah, right. I like the fact that they brought up, Cena mentioned how Brock is like a part-timer. He comes back for a couple of big fights a year, and he's not on the road with the boys, and he called him a mercenary like he's done before. But I like the way they use that to build up Brock as a threat. Like they use what is different about Brock. which is what I mean. I don't understand why they don't do that with everybody. You should always use. That's one of the easiest ways to get over in wrestling and to make yourself notice is to use what makes you different. And what makes Brock different is that he's the guy who comes in for the big fight. He's not there every week.
He'll
He's
be
not,
fresh. He'll always be
yeah,
fresh when he gets to you.
yeah, and use that to push the fight. Be like, yeah, but he's not here every night. He only comes in for the big fights. He's not one of us. He's not just a guy in the back. Because if they ever make it so that Brock just feels like another guy, there's no reason for him to be there. I mean, it has to be special when he comes out, and it has to be a big deal when he has a match. And this is one where it feels like they're really making it feel like a big deal, and they're really doing it right. And I really like that video package.
Yeah, I don't really care much for either of the guys. I don't care for John Cena. I never really care for Brock Lesnar, and it has a lot to do with that part-time contract that he has. But I just like the Bray Wyatt John Cena match. I am very, very interested in because they are promoting it very well to draw that interest in. So I'm invested in this match. I'd like to see. I still think Brock's probably going to kick his ass, but
Yeah.
I'm on the fence about that because it will require him to make more television appearances.
You get to see a lot more Brock.
Mm-hmm.
Or a lot less of the WWE champion. I think it'll probably wind up being more like that.
I can deal with that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've actually kind of liked the fact that Cena has, like, of the last 3 Raws, Cena has only actually been live in the arena for one. Like he's skipped every other show, at least as far as seeing him on TV. But I think that's great. I think it's nice to have a break from the John Cena show. That's one of the reasons why people are so down on him, because they're just fucking sick of him. He's everywhere. He's all over the place. Next was a segment that I didn't get to see. It was cut for my Hulu version. It was Damian Sandow dressed as a player on the Oklahoma Sooners versus hometown boy Mark Henry. And Mark Henry squashed Damian Sandow.
He certainly did squash him. And it is a shame, because where the fuck have you been, Mark Henry? I realize you're out there because this is your hometown crowd, and the WWE tends to, give you a little nod when that happens. But they once again they feed him Damian Sandow, and the poor guy has got the shit end of the stick. So I guess we'll just have to we'll just call it the shit end of the stick match this week.
Yeah, again, it's like it's the excuse, I guess, as well. At least he's on TV, but I mean,
Yeah.
Christ, he's been booked in these loser gimmick of the week things for so long now. Next was a match in a Beat the Clock challenge. They set up this Beat the Clock challenge between Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins, where they would each wrestle different opponents, and whoever won their match the fastest would get to pick a stipulation for their match at SummerSlam. So Dean's match was against Alberto Del Rio, the former world champion and WWE champion, who is now wrestling Dean Ambrose in a Beat the Clock match. And the idea is that Ambrose wants to win as quickly as possible because he wants to be the one who wins in the shortest time. And it actually turns out to be a long match. This is like a 15-minute match, which is really long, especially for a TV match on Raw, and a really good match. I thought it was easily the match of the night, and because it was Dean Ambrose basically just taking the heat for the whole match. I mean, he was just selling his ass off, and Alberto Del Rio working on his arm, which Dean still has taped up, supposedly has a bad shoulder, really worked his arm. And I love the finish because Dean ends up winning the match at a time of 15 minutes and 42 seconds, they announced. And he hits his finisher, but he usually hits his finish with his left arm, but his left arm is hurt, so he hits the finish on Alberto with his other arm. I thought that was a nice touch. But I thought this was a really, really terrific match. What did you think of it?
Yeah, I agree with you. Probably the best match of the night. It had some longevity to it and let you get interested. Great selling on Dean Ambrose's part. Of course, we got to have that shoulder taped up this week because Alberto works the arm, so we want to make him. You got to give him a reason to give you that heat. So, but it will be nice to see the bandages eventually come off Dean Ambrose. I mean, I tell you, Dean. It just seems to get better and better every single week, and I hope that after this huge feud with Seth Rollins that we can move on to maybe like give him the ball a little bit like they did with Steve Austin. And Steve Austin, they kind of give him the ball and see what he can do. Give Dean Ambrose the ball and see what he can do. Because we've seen him off the cuff in like YouTube videos, and the guy's brilliant.
Oh, he's awesome. Yeah, I agree. If they would give him, if someone would go up to Dean after the Rollins program is over, and someone from creative or Triple H or Vince or somebody, and say, Dean, what do you want to do? You know, just see what he says. See what his idea of what he should do next is, because he's a great promo. He's awesome in the ring. He's over. I mean, people love him as a babyface, and he's different. He's not like a clean-cut good guy. He's a little nuts. He's a little rough. You know, he could be a huge star for them, and I hope he is. I hope that by the time we get to next year's WrestleMania, that he's up there near the top, because he deserves to be. I mean, he's terrific. Next is the continuing saga of the United States versus Russia, as Rusev and Lana are actually in the ring as we come back from commercial break, and it's announced that Rusev had a match during the commercial with Sin Cara and won the match. The entire match took place on the commercial break.
Twice they've done this shit to us.
Yeah, you could only see it if you were watching the extra stuff on the WWE app. So he beat Sin Cara. Sin Cara had a match on Raw without actually having a match on Raw, which I don't know if that's ever happened before. And then Lana sings a really sarcastic version of Happy Birthday in Russian for President Obama. She makes herself kind of sound like Marilyn Monroe, but she's singing it in Russian. And then, of course, Jack Swagger and Zeb Coulter come out to interrupt, and they both got flags because they're having a flag match at SummerSlam that we mentioned in last week's show. Rusev with the Russian flag, and, of course, Zeb carrying the Stars and Stripes for his side, or the Stars and Bars, as he incorrectly has called it a couple of times. Stars and Bars is a different flag, Zeb. Anyway, he tells Lana to shut up, which I laughed at, just because Zeb really in these promos with Lana just seems like he's just completely done with her. Like, she starts jawing at him in Russian, and he just goes, "Lana, will you shut up?" Like, he's just over the whole thing.
I'm sick of hearing all about Vladimir Putin, and I'm sick of hearing you, Lana. And most of all, I'm sick and tired of hearing Rusev crush.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And he cut a promo where they illustrated it with like stock photos of people on the Titantron that I'm sure they just Googled these photos or paid for a subscription to iStock or something, because it's like, you know, the girl who's a nurse and like the construction worker guy, and the idea is that these are supposedly real people, and these are the real Americans that Jack Swagger is representing when he goes into the ring against Rusev. I thought it was a little corny, but man, the people still are eating this shit up. Another huge USA chant. I mean, this whole, and it ends up with, you know, Rusev attacks Swagger with the flag, and they kind of have a little tumble around in the ring, and Coulter ends up alone in the ring with Rusev, but Lana kind of pulls Rusev back and doesn't let him touch Zeb, and they back off. And
which that was dumb. That was completely dumb.
Yeah.
He should have got out of the ring the moment that, if he wasn't going to do anything, he should have got out of that fucking ring the moment Rusev attacked Jack Swagger. He should have not been in there.
I agree.
He was in there for no reason whatsoever, and it made him look stupid. He should have not. It just was out of place. If they weren't going to beat his ass or do anything, he shouldn't have been in there. So
yeah.
And he should know that. Dutch, you should know that, brother.
And he was in there for a long time too. Like it wasn't like he was just there and then Rusev kind of went like that and backed away. Like that was a good while there. And yeah, it's like, what? God, Zeb, just get out of the ring. Like, what are you doing here? Because they didn't.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, because they just didn't do anything. I mean, it looked like for a second like he was going to wallop him with the flag or something, but you know, he didn't do anything.
Yeah, there's a little something we learn in wrestling when we do our thing, you know, because we do everything kayfabe. Like, say, I was a heel. I was always a heel in wrestling, and I like to do tag team. Well, if my opponents on the other side were dumb enough, while I'm on the outside holding the rope, if you come close enough to me, then I am going to reach out and try to hit you or smack the hell out of the back of your head or do something because you just walked into the danger zone and you really should have known better. And if Rusev is that, I mean, compared to what he just said to Lana and them, what he just finished saying, he should have attacked him.
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't make any sense. I mean, I read something on the internet. I think it was today. I was reading a recap of the show, and they mentioned that they don't think that Zeb is cleared to be touched. Like he's old and he's injured, and they're probably not. They really don't want people touching Zeb, so he couldn't take a beat down. But if that's the case, then yeah, like you say, he should have just bailed out. Like, why have him in the ring at all if you know that it's not going anywhere, that he can't be touched? Just keep him out of the ring.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and leave him as the guy who does the talking, and don't get him in the ring to do any action shit.
You just stand there looking stupid with your flag between your legs.
He should have sneaked under the rope and gone out to the outside of the ring.
And crawled up the ramp and into the back curtain and took a chair from another hard-working sit-on-your-asser.
There you go. Exactly. Next was another match, actually two matches that I didn't get to see because they were cut for Hulu. There was a Dolph versus Cesaro that was cut from the Hulu version, although I looked it up, and Ziggler won that match. It seemed like it was pretty short. He won with a pinfall, and then afterwards there was an angle between Miz and Ziggler to set up their match at SummerSlam. It's going to be Ziggler versus the Miz at SummerSlam for the Intercontinental title. And then there was another tag team match in the seemingly never-ending series between Ryback and Goldust and Stardust. These guys, it seems like just in the last 3 or 4 months, they've wrestled against each other as many times as like the Midnight Express and the Rock and Roll Express ever did.
I know, without the historic storyline. So, but hey, hold on to your panties, ladies, because that's going to change if you watch SmackDown this Friday. Ryback will be wrestling and they will be in action, but it will not be against Cosmo Dust or Star Gold or whatever the hell they're called.
You know what they're called.
I don't pay much attention to it.
Yeah. They're both.
I'm a silver guy, you know. I like silver.
Yeah. Where's Silver Dust? They should have someone rip off the Silver Surfer's gimmick and have him be like Gold Dust's arch rival, you know. Mm-hmm. Anyway, and then next was that backstage segment we mentioned earlier where Kane kind of comes into the authorities' office and pulls his mask off and hands it to Stephanie. So I guess they're doing that again. he was the demon again for a couple months, and now he's like, fuck this, I'm getting too old for this shit. Takes the mask off.
It hasn't really done a whole lot as a demon. He's gotten thrown into championship matches he did not belong in, and honestly, since he's put the mask back on, he's been made to look weak against the newer crowd.
Yeah, well, like we mentioned a couple weeks ago, I think on this show. I mean, he was doing a lot better as Corporate Kane when he was coming out like wrestling in a fucking tank top and slacks. I mean, at least he was made to look strong. Now he's just, since he put the mask back on, he's just been a loser. What's the fucking, well, it hasn't helped him any. And he certainly hasn't gotten any more over because of it. I mean, I don't think anybody really gives a shit about Kane at this point.
No, I think everybody's pretty much over him. You know, there's nothing left for him to do. He's been there forever, and he's had a long, great career. And he's only held, I think, the championship one time, and it wasn't for long. But he's held it. He's on that list. But it's about time. I think he's getting to that age where he's got all of his side hobbies that he does in politics and everything, and it might be time for him to step back and start to venture down one of those roads outside of wrestling.
Yeah, it's surprising he hasn't done that yet, because I mean, when you think about how long he's been around just as Kane, I mean, because he did Fake Diesel and Isaac Yankem DDS. He's been around for a long time. But
Jerry Lawler's favorite dentist.
Yeah, I love that's one of the great things about like mid-90s WWF. As fucking horrible as a lot of those gimmicks were, I mean, they had like the guys who they were wrestlers, but they also had other jobs like the wrestling dentist. Why would you ever be a wrestling dentist? And he's not just some crazy dentist who likes to wrestle. He's Jerry Lawler's fucking personal dentist. That's.
I heard that Duke Jersey was his personal garbage man.
See, man, Lawler was just getting people jobs like crazy in the mid '90s in the WWE.
Yeah, there was who was the plumber? Something.
Dusty
DL. I don't know. There was a plumber at one point in time. It was,
you're right.
Dirty white boy guy played him.
Yeah. Oh, then there was Sparky Plug, Bob Holly, the NASCAR driver. Yeah. I mean, it was just the Goon, the hockey player. It's like everybody had a side job. Everybody was a wrestler, and they also had another job.
I always thought that Bob Holly should have been donned in a cape and be called like Captain Chiclet, because he had those huge fucking front mouth teeth, and it looked like he had like a mouthful of chiclets in there. So I thought Captain Chiclet would have been perfect for Bob Holly.
That would have been funny. He still would have walked around like he was 10 feet tall.
Had we known then when he was given that dumbass gimmick that he is kind of like a badass in the ring, he will whip your ass. It's like, that kind of came as a surprise when I learned that, because you can't judge a book by its cover, and his cover was pretty silly with NASCAR gimmicks.
Yeah, that's true.
And then Crash Holly, come on now.
Yeah.
May his soul rest in peace.
No longer with us. The perhaps the greatest hardcore champion in the history of the WWF. So next is another match: Chris Jericho versus Luke Harper. And the idea here is if Jericho wins this match, then Harper and Rowan are banned from ringside for the Summerslam match between Jericho and Bray Wyatt. Harper actually, the highlight of this match for me was that Harper hit Jericho with his Michinoku driver that he uses a lot, and Michael Cole actually called the move.
Called it. Yes, he did. I picked that shit up. I was like, holy crap, did he just say that shit? Yeah,
he called a move.
Cole called a move. Cole called a move. Cole called a move. JR was at home, like eating barbecue chicken, like Cole called a move.
Exactly. JR spat his barbecue chicken out of his fucking face. He's like, did he just call a move? Yeah. So, and of course there was Jericho kicked out, and Harper does that thing that he does now that I really love. His body language, like when the guy kicks out and he's not expecting him to, is awesome. And he just kind of looks around and he does this thing, and he's like, he kind of like collects his thoughts. He's like, okay, what next? Harper's just great.
Yeah, he's got them wild eyes, like just kind of like. Like, what the fuck do I need to do? Oh, I'll do that. That sounds great.
Exactly. He's great. He's really good. So Jericho eventually turns him over into the walls of Jericho, but then the lights go out. The lights come back up, and there's Bray Wyatt. And he's in the aisle, sort of distracting Jericho, but Jericho hits Harper with the code breaker, and then Bray Wyatt runs in, and they call the DQ. So Jericho does win the match, which means that the Wyatt family is banned from ringside for the Bray Wyatt versus Jericho match at SummerSlam. But Bray doesn't seem too upset by that. He jabs his leather thumb into Jericho's throat, and then hits him with Sister Abigail and strikes his, follow the buzzards pose. And that was that. I hope that this match at SummerSlam is good, and I hope that Bray wins and looks good doing it, because it feels like this feud is really running out of steam in a hurry, and I don't think it's doing Bray any favors.
Yeah, and I don't know. I have a feeling like it's Jericho, because it's like I really was not that excited about Jericho coming back, and I don't think he's thrusted into this feud of these guys who are doing really well, and I think as a part of that feud, he's just dragging them down a little bit. But I do think that not having Harper and Rowan at ringside is setting up for maybe one great match between Chris Jericho and Bray Wyatt, because we're going to see a straight-up great match between the two, because we don't and won't see this outside interference. I'm not saying we won't see it, but I'm just saying it's not supposed to be there, unless a new member of the Wyatt family comes in.
Oh.
Those two aren't allowed down.
Maybe Daniel Bryan will rejoin.
I hear Sister Abigail might be coming in.
Oh, really?
Not really, but you know who played great Sister Abigail?
Who?
The Scream Queen Daphne.
Hey.
Daphne would play a great Sister Abigail because she plays that freaky. She can play that freaky role.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, I hope it's a. I mean, I don't know. I can't put my finger on it really either because I mean, I actually when Jericho came back, and they put him right with the Wyatts. I mean, the first week I thought, oh, this is cool, and the crowd at that show even were chanting, "This is awesome." But ever since then, it's just been kind of straight downhill. Like just nothing that exciting has happened. I mean, you have two like Jericho and Bray Wyatt, two guys who are awesome promos. They haven't really had any good promos in this feud. At least nothing really memorable. You know, they're both capable of putting on a hell of a match. The matches haven't really been that great so far. It's just kind of it's like nothing's really exciting. Nothing really special is happening here. And it doesn't hurt Jericho because he's Jericho and he can come and go as he pleases. He's like a legend at this point. But I think it's hurting Bray Wyatt. You know.
Well, Jericho, he comes in and cuts a promo, and I know you said that he's cutting good promos, but it makes me feel like the same promo you're cutting on Monday Night Raw was the same promos you were cutting back in the year 2000 when you first came in as Y2J.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing new. I mean, honestly, Chris Jericho, I would be just fine if I would never, ever, ever have to hear your promos again.
Yeah. What he needs to do is he needs to remake his babyface promos the same way he remade his heel promos a few years ago when he turned serious and he started wearing the suit and him and Big Show were teamed up and like he was more of a straight heel and he didn't do any of the catchphrases or at least he didn't do them as often as he used to. But then it's now like since he's come back for these short runs the last 2 years, he's always been a babyface and it's like he just does the same shit that he did like you said like 10 or 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it just feels stale. He needs to remake his babyface act the same way he changed up his heel act that got everybody excited about him again. And it just seems like he's just not doing that.
And your wardrobe, because I'm not impressed with that leather rock jacket made by Light Bright.
That's like his whole gimmick now, though. Like, I mean, that's it. He's Chris Jericho, and he's got the fucking light up jacket, and that's pretty much it. That's his deal.
I am sorry, because we could have some younger viewers out there. Light Bright was like a screen that had a light behind it, and you could put stencils on it, and you get these different little, like Christmas tree light bulbs that you could put in and make a drawing and then light it up. That's what Light Brights are. If none of you know what those were, because we used to have toys instead of playing with our phones all day.
Yes, that's from a long time ago, kids. When you had to have toys to entertain yourself.
I'd love to take your phone and throw it in my Easy Bake Oven, damn it.
That's great.
Or my Snoopy snow cone maker.
Hey, yes. Okay, so next were a couple of more segments that I didn't get to see because they were cut for the Hulu version. They cut out Diego versus Fandango, which was fine with me because it sounds like exactly the same Fandango segment they've done for the last month, just with Diego instead of somebody else.
No, but it was a little different. It was a little different.
Well, they did have Hornswoggle, right?
Hornswoggle came down.
Yeah.
And I have to give credit to Diego because I thought the outfit he was wearing this week, the red and black, was banging. I thought they looked really sharp. That they should wear it. It's almost like a skin type rubber mask, black and red tights, and I thought that was the best wardrobe I've seen them in. They should stick with that. And of course we got to see little Hornswoggle and El Dorito. Kind of come together for the first time since their feud, and they were dancing with some lovely ladies out there the other night. So, I just wish that Fandango could go along and do his thing instead of having to, as we talked about, having to do this dumbass storyline because it just doesn't make sense, and it's not going to do anything to further his career.
No, and like we said last week, I mean, it's not going anywhere. Like, what's the blow off? I mean, they've already gotten revenge on Fandango. They humiliate him every single week. Like, it's not going anywhere. And then I also missed the epic rematch from last week, R-Truth versus Bo Dallas. I saw that Bo actually did win this one with a roll-up and pulling the tights. And then they brawled afterwards, and he bulldogged Truth on the floor. So,
as they say on the WWE website, Truth got.
I always liked that catchphrase. I always liked when Truth would say that. I thought that was it was really short and, you gonna get got! I thought that was awesome.
Oh, they call it a dirty roll-up. Come on now. If Rep didn't see it, it was clean.
Yeah, that's right. A dirty roll-up.
How do you know it was a dirty roll-up? Official call was a pinfall, and that was it.
That's right. There's nothing in the record books that says he won with a dirty roll-up. I love when what's funny is like the way WWE promotes their wrestling as so like openly fake. Like they basically tell you that they're not actually fighting every single match, and yet they'll still occasionally, like JBL or somebody will say, well, in the record book it'll say a win for Bo Dallas. Like, but there ain't no record book.
I would love to see this record book.
Like, you're always telling us that it's fake. There is no record book. I mean,
I would imagine that record book would have to be larger than the 26-volume set of the Encyclopedia International.
It's like from here to the ceiling. Next was a Bray Wyatt promo. He cut a backstage promo on Chris Jericho saying that he doesn't really care that Harper and Rowan are banned from ringside for their SummerSlam match because he's never alone. Abigail is always with him, and then the people follow behind her. And he says that he is the nightmare beyond Jericho's dream, which is a pretty good line, I thought. And then he said he's got the whole world in his hands thing. And so there you go. Another Bray Wyatt. I'm even starting to get tired of the Bray Wyatt promos. Like, it's just, this whole feud is just like, like I like both guys. I want it to be good, but it's just like it's on autopilot. It feels like.
Yeah, that's the way I felt with Raw this week. I did feel a little better during Dean Ambrose's match, and of course the next match we're going to get into, I was like, holy shit, that was awesome! But before we actually get into that next match, and I posted this, I want to talk a little bit about what Randy Orton pulled off this week.
Okay.
On Twitter. As some of you may know, he got a picture with a fan somewhere, and he had made light of her, calling her basically Miss Piggy, like a Miss Pig, and making fun of her weight, and I guess there was some backstage heat on Randy Orton at the time, and he took the tweet down, and then he puts a new tweet up saying the answer to bullying is not more bullying. So apparently that was probably something he was told to do, because this is not the first time Randy Orton's acted up and been an asshole toward people. Mm-hmm. Which right now, at this point, you've done it one too many times. Randy Orton, Mr. Viper, I label you, sir, asshole. You are an asshole.
It certainly seems that way.
Bully me, bitch. Come on over. I can take the heat. You're still an asshole.
He does. He comes across that way a lot. Like you kind of get the feeling when he's acting like an asshole on the show, it's not that much of a stretch. Mm-hmm. He's kind of just being himself.
Well, you can just tell by the way he perches his lips, and when he's looking at the camera, he's got like he's about ready to kiss the camera. So yeah, he's pretty smug.
Yeah, he is. It must be killing him. It must be killing him that he's not in the main event. It must be killing him. I bet he's one of. I mean, CM Punk was the same way. CM Punk always thought he should have been in the main event. But I mean, I'm a CM Punk fan, so it didn't really bother me as much. But Orton is like that. I know he's got to be that kind of a guy who's like every time he looks at the fucking booking sheet and he's not working in the main event, he's like, oh.
Yeah. Gotta be careful. Gotta be careful with Randy Orton. He might relapse.
Yeah.
Asshole.
RK asshole.
RK asshole. There you go.
So let's talk about the next match, because the next match was another beat the clock match, and it was supposed to be Rob Van Dam versus Seth Rollins, but they did a little bait and switch on us, because in real life I think Rob is actually injured. I don't know if he's cleared to wrestle yet. But Rob comes out and he gets in the ring and everything, and then Justin Roberts announces that there has been a last-minute substitution as ordered by the Authority, and it's not going to be Rob Van Dam versus Seth Rollins. It's going to be Seth Rollins versus Heath Slater. And that's what it was. And during the match, Dean Ambrose showed up and was kind of fucking around at ringside to distract Seth Rollins, and that was really most of the match. The match in the ring wasn't quite as important as what was going on outside with Dean doing all these crazy things to distract Seth Rollins. He took the Money in the Bank briefcase and he opened it up and he tore up the contract. He took a drink from a fan and poured it into the briefcase. He poured popcorn into it. He stole JBL's hat and stuffed that into the briefcase with the soda and the popcorn. And eventually, Rollins is so distracted by what Ambrose is doing that he gets rolled up and Heath Slater pins him.
Holy shit!
Slater wins the match.
I know. I was so excited, man. Because I always wish they would do something with Heath Slater, especially since the three-man band broke up. He's become a glorified Damian Sandow as well. He's entertaining, but he doesn't really do anything else but lose matches. So to see him given one this week, Damian Sandow, Heath Slater,
right,
is now higher up in the rankings than you are.
You know what I loved even more than Slater winning the match, which I mean I thought was terrific. But there's a moment between him and Rollins at the beginning of the match when Seth Rollins it seems like from reading their lips and overhearing them in the ring, it basically seems like Seth Rollins is saying to Heath, just walk away, just take the count out and just leave. And it seems like they book Slater to have like resentment, like he doesn't like that he's being put out there as the weak opponent, like, oh, Seth, take the night off, you don't have to wrestle Rob Van Dam, you could wrestle Heath Slater, he sucks. And it's like that got to Heath, and he's like, well, fuck you, and he kind of turns on him and starts pummeling him. And I mean, I really like that they gave him like a sense of pride. It wasn't just he didn't like being thought of as the weak guy, and he's gonna fucking take it to Seth Rollins and show him something. I thought that was really good, just a subtle thing.
I thought it was a nice bait and switch that they did, because they announced Rob Van Dam. You don't know it really any better that it may or may not be Rob Van Dam, but it makes it look like, okay, you got Dean had Alberto Del Rio, and on equal footing, Seth Rollins is going to have Rob Van Dam. But here's the swerve, because he's part of the Authority. We're going to send him what we think is the weakest link in the whole locker room. And sure enough, that backfired on him, and I thought it played off well. This is also one of my favorite matches of the night, and it's not because of the shenanigans going on outside. It was just because I thought the storyline and the bait and switch thing that they did was really well done, and it paid off well for Heath Slater. So kudos to you, brother. It was awesome.
Yeah, I agree. It was a good segment, and I loved I like the antics that Ambrose did outside, but on another way, I kind of think, like, would Dean Ambrose really do that? Like, I mean, what I thought they were going to do is I thought that Ambrose was going to run in and attack Heath Slater, so that Heath would win the match by DQ, and then Seth Rollins would just be completely screwed because he would lose the match, which means he would lose the beat the clock. But they didn't do that. They had him do all the shit outside with the briefcase. I like when Dean finally picked up the briefcase and it was still full of soda, and you could see the soda like flying everywhere. And Dean just doesn't give a shit. He's like standing on the announce table just waving it around, and it's like flying I thought that was great. Dean Ambrose is the guy who doesn't give a shit is awesome.
If they really want to kind of make him like look crazy, that unorthodox style that Dean Ambrose has, what he really should have done was opened a briefcase, dropped trowel, and took a shit in it.
Yes. Giving it the Sable treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Who else? Who didn't the British Bulldogs used to do that shit to people too? Like they would shit in people's bags. I think I've heard stories about that.
It wouldn't have had to been his shit. It could have been like a bucket of pig shit or something. Just,
yeah.
Give it a reason that Seth would never want to touch that briefcase again.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was, Dean is just terrific. Next was, I guess you would call it the main event, the contract signing between Stephanie McMahon and Brie Bella for their match. Once again, this gets the closing segment of the show. This is 2 weeks in a row that they've closed the show with Steph versus Brie. And Michael Cole is in the ring for no reason, really. He doesn't do anything. But they have the table set up and the conference room chairs, and it's going to be the contract signing. And Triple H and Stephanie come out, and then both of the Bella twins come out together for the first time in a while. and Triple H says that he's only here to be a supportive husband. He's not here as like the head of the WWE or the COO or whatever. And Stephanie kind of teases Brie by saying, "Yeah, my husband's here to support me. And where's your husband at? Is he still in a hospital bed recovering?" And they kind of go back and forth like that. Brie says, wonders if Steph has recovered from being publicly arrested 2 weeks ago, and they show the footage of that again, just in case you didn't see that.
Steph looks like she's over it.
Yeah, she seems like she's dealing with it pretty well. And so anyway, they do the contract signing, and actually I thought it was they gave Brie a chance to do kind of a callback, because she says she's not just going to be fighting Steph for herself or for her sister, but also for Daniel Bryan and for Vicky Guerrero and for the Big Show and for the Rhodes brothers and for everybody else. And at this point, the crowd helpfully chants CM Punk, that the Authority has tormented like over the last year. So I thought it was kind of neat to remind everybody of all, although in another way it reminds people of all the storylines that they have completely forgotten about. It's like, oh yeah, remember that?
Yeah, not until you actually mention. I'm like, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. That's not first and foremost on my mind. I don't think about it, and you have to literally bring it up for me to remember it, because it's like, oh yeah, I remember seeing that. Yeah, I remember this storyline. But
I remember all those stories.
That's what wrestling is. I mean, it just moves along so quickly these days, and you don't have months to absorb a wrestling storyline anymore.
Yeah, that's true. It is a lot different. I mean, it used to be they would, even in the WWF, which even, when I was a kid was always criticized by the hardcore wrestling fans as being like too cartoony or too fast or whatever. I mean, back in the day, the WWF would do like 1 or 2 big angles a year, and that would be enough to drive the show like, from one pay-per-view to another. And now it's so much more fast-paced. So yeah, anyway, they do the contract signing. Steph clocks Nikki with the folder, the contract folder, which I guess had a brick in it or something, because Nikki just fucking goes down like she just got kicked in the head. And then Triple H pushes the table into the corner to block Brie in the corner so she can't get out, and Stephanie pedigrees Nikki in the center of the ring.
And it was well done. It was a well done pedigree too. No knee pads on that woman. Not one single knee pad. And I have to give it up for Steph, man. She took him down.
Yeah, and she did it again.
Those are really good. Yeah, those are really good pedigrees. And Triple H manhandled the woman.
Yes, he did.
Not personally, did didn't put his hands on her, but he did force her to do something she didn't want to do. And
yes, he did not.
That's borderline rape.
Yeah, he did not behave in a gentlemanly way. He did not behave in a respectful way. But yeah, so anyway, yeah, Brie finally climbs over the table, like kind of slaps her way out, and she gets pedigreed too. So Stephanie pedigrees both Bella twins. And there you have it. Stephanie McMahon versus Brie Bella.
That moment right after she got pedigreed, where Triple H and Stephanie look at each other and they give themselves like that evil smile and they lip lock, I thought that was priceless. I thought that was a good moment. Just we're doing this despite and because we can.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm a 4th generation McMahon. Suck it.
Yeah, I and again, like, I kind of repeat myself from last week, but it's surprising how well this story is getting over. Like it really. I never thought in a million years I would give 2 shits about Stephanie McMahon wrestling Brie Bella, and they've actually kind of got me looking forward to this match, just to see what happens. I don't have any expectation that it'll be a good match at all, but just to see how the story resolves.
This will not be a good match.
It'll be a terrible match.
Brie probably can handle her own, but Steph, she's don't have long to be training up for this, so it's going to be a lot of choking and pulling hair and cheating, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't expect it to be good, but it's a hot match, and I mean, who would have ever thought that
is hot. It is pretty hot. It is pretty hot because I'm wanting one of Stephanie's titties to pop out during the match. That'd be nice. It's like, mama. I don't want to see Bree's titties. I'd rather see Nikki's.
Yeah.
Well, you see one titty, you want to see all titties.
Yeah, you just want to, yeah, exactly. You just want to see if it's exactly how you pictured it. Um, so yeah, that was Raw. I I mean, when I talk about it now, it doesn't. It seems like a pretty decent show. It had some good wrestling on it. It had some good angle development. But man, like the obnoxious network shilling
Hmm.
really was. I mean, as watching the show, it got really really annoying.
Yeah.
You know.
But
Um,
wrestlers can do that. They can take something like that $9.99 and get a little silly, and be a lot of times. And I know this from being in too many locker rooms. Wrestlers can be very immature. They are. They do live in a world where they like to play pretend.
yeah. No, it's funny. I was what was I watching the other day? I was listening to something. Um, oh no, I was listening to Steve Austin's podcast this morning while I was doing some other stuff, and the guest was Ricky Morton,
Hmm.
and it was a really good show. But it just reminded me of how especially those old school wrestlers from the 70s and 80s, like who were brought up when everything was still kayfabe and the business was still really well protected. I mean, you can never tell when they're giving you an interview and it's like a shoot interview. You can just never tell whether they're actually telling you the truth or not. And it's not their fault. It's not that they're bad people or they're just liars. That's just how they were trained to always be working. So when Ricky Morton tells like a story about, oh, this is the way it was in the locker room in Jim Crockett Promotions in 1987, it's like, is that really how it was, or are you just working? You know?
Yeah, I mean he get
But,
I've hang and banged with Ricky Morton quite a number of times in my career, and I'll be seeing him again in 2 weeks because we have CPW is running a show up in Petersburg, West Virginia. The main event's going to be Shane Shadows teaming up with Ricky Morton against Bill Bain and the Stro, the Maestro from old WCW. So it was
oh
really
yeah,
good to see. And the special referee for that match, of course, is rugged Ronnie Garvin.
yes, a past legend of the week for us this week, the great rugged Ronnie Garvin. Yeah, so I mean, I mentioned this on the show a couple. Wrestling fans who watch this, which I would imagine will be most of you who are watching this. If you're not listening to Steve Austin's podcast, at least on kind of a regular basis, you're really you're jipping yourself because it is such an awesome show.
And it's free. It's free.
Yeah, exactly. It's totally free.
That's
You
what
don't
I say.
have to.
That's what I say about this show. I'm like, it's wrestling with wrestling. It don't cost you $9.99 because that shit's free.
Exactly. It doesn't cost you a goddamn thing. Um, So yeah, it's a really good show, and Jim Ross's podcast as well. I haven't listened to Jericho's very much, and I listened to Roddy Piper's the first episode, and I kind of just was done with it after that. But Jim Ross's podcast is really really terrific too.
Yeah, when Roddy is being like when he's down when he's just being mellow guy, I don't really much care for listening to him. And then you got that flip side of that where he gets all excited and his voice starts to crack, and that's a little annoying. That would be annoying too for a podcast. So I don't see I'd be interested. I actually, from your recommendation, started listening to the Jim Ross podcast, and it is really good. And you don't have a whole lot right now, but every one of them is it's good reporting, man. He is probably one of the best because that's what he did, man. He's great at reporting and bringing you the news. So yeah, Jim Ross. If you have not listened to the Jim Ross podcast, which is free, check it out.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's actually. Did you have any other like wrestling news related shit you wanted to talk about? Because we're actually ahead of schedule. We usually are like
We
up
are.
against it, but we have plenty of show left to stretch out.
Yes, but it is a sad week for the WWE because due to the fact that they have lost a ton of money, they have announced the discontinuing of their magazine department. So WWE magazine will no longer be printed. The kids version is no longer going to be in print, which is good, I think, because you get all your news on the website anyways. Who's buying them? It's like newspapers. If you're buying newspapers anymore.
Right.
Although I do appreciate reading a newspaper. having something in my hand. So I have a ton of WWF magazines. I made a video about this the other day of how I have magazines all back when they were doing it every other month, and from the earliest one I have is like a 1986, got Roddy Piper on the cover, and then I have like almost 15 years of that magazine straight and never missed a single one. And then I got into PWI. But I thought it was sad and needed to be mentioned that the WWE or WWF and WWE magazine, which has been around for since I was a kid, is coming to an end, and I just wanted to if you don't know that, now you know.
Yeah, I thought it made me kind of sad too. I mean, I haven't read a copy of it for years, but when I was a kid, that was sort of when I knew that I was really a wrestling fan, when I started getting the WWF magazine. Because then you're like, oh, it's not just enough to watch this shit on TV every week. I got to read about it, And yeah, I remember I don't have nearly the collection that you have, but I still have some old issues from like 1990, 1991. I remember having the one with the one that they printed right after WrestleMania 6 with Warrior on the cover holding up the belts.
Both belts, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that one. And yeah, it's sad because the WWF magazine, I mean, they kept that thing around forever. I mean, I remember there were a couple of attempts to do a WCW magazine back in the day, and it never quite caught on. Like, it never lasted very long. But the WWF, I mean, they kept putting their magazine out every month, year after year, and it is kind of the passing of an era. That it's, I mean, that, like you say, I mean, magazines and newspapers in general are kind of going down the toilet as people move to digital stuff. But yeah, it's too bad, Although it is an easy way for them to cut their budget, just really shit can the magazine.
But a lot of people are going to lose their jobs over this.
Yeah, that's true. Thanks, Vince.
Thankfully, people like Bill Apter and my friend Tim Walker, they have really switched over to working for Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and they make their good bread and butter there. And honestly, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, if you're going to read a wrestling magazine, is the better one. That's why I stopped buying the WWE magazine anyways, because WWE magazine, it's all was kayfabe inside their magazine anyways. So it's like it wasn't like really journalistic reporting on anything going on. It was making you see things the way they wanted you to see them. PWI does it a little bit differently. They give you the backstage stories, and I picked up on that real quick, and really started to like that. I still get that magazine from time to time.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, I that one, and then the Wrestler, which was sort of affiliated with that. Yeah, I used to read that one a lot too.
I think that they eventually became like a flip side, the Wrestler, and then I think it was Inside Wrestling was on the flip side, upside down when you.
Yeah. because the Wrestler and Inside Wrestling used to be separate magazines, but then they did it was the same thing, but it was just they were two magazines in one volume, which was kind of interesting. Yeah, man, there used to be so many wrestling magazines. I guess a lot of them have just gone out of business because of the internet. But yeah, there was PWI, there was Inside Wrestling, there was the Wrestler, there was all these other smaller. I think there was one called Wrestling Spotlight or Wrestling Superstars or something. There was a ton of them. I remember, and then there was one that used to have a fantasy match feature where they would write they would write a short story, but it was about this wrestling match that hadn't actually happened.
Never happened, right?
Yeah, and they did one about Hulk Hogan versus Lex Luger, and this was back in 1990. When they had always worked for different companies, and it's funny to think 3 or 4 years later they actually did that match because they were both in WCW, and it wasn't nearly as epic as it was in that magazine, because they made it sound like both guys ended up being stretchered out, and it was like they were all they ended up going to the hospital because they had beaten each other so viciously, and they made it sound like in the fantasy version like it was going to be just the most fucking epic match ever, and it didn't quite turn out that way.
Some other epic news, and this comes from this is not really news, but it's speculation. Comes from our friend Jim Ross, who we just spoke about, of the possibility that the WWE, in order to save even more money, are going to go back to their Wrestling Super Show, where they do Raw and then tape SmackDown the same night, so they don't have to travel so much and save money that way. So that's something in the rumor mills. If WWE's scenario keeps getting lower and lower and lower. They keep losing money and money and money. You can probably see this happening. Absolutely.
Yeah, it does seem like they're taking every opportunity they possibly can to cut costs. I mean, and like I say, I mean, I mentioned last week, it's actually a sign that the company is strong, that they can afford to do things like this, and it doesn't, and still keep rolling along. And real honestly, I mean, what they should think about doing, and I know that this isn't even remotely a realistic possibility, because for one thing, they would lose a lot of revenue because they earn a lot of money from the TV rights. That's one of their major sources of revenue. But if they would just trim the sheer amount of content that they do. I mean, someone mentioned, I think I was listening to Live Audio Wrestling this past week, and they mentioned how, think about this, right? You have 3 hours live of Raw every week, 2 hours taped of SmackDown every week, plus you have main event, plus you have superstars. And then if you want to count NXT, which is a separate thing, but still, it's part of the WWE, like that's like a full work day just watching wrestling every week. It's insane how much wrestling they have on TV every single week. And if they would just, I know that I'm sure that if they didn't make money with SmackDown, they wouldn't do it. But, instead of taping everything in one giant super show, just say, you know what, when SmackDown's contract comes up, we're just not going to do that. Or keep SmackDown, but fucking forget main event. Because, I mean, if main event is mostly just on the WWE network now anyway, and they're not doing anything with it. It's basically just another episode of Superstars. Save some money there. Chop off an hour from your TV taping that you're just putting on the network anyway. I mean, you're not even getting any licensing fees from it.
And seeing as you're using all the talent on both shows anyways, and you've combined the stories, the only thing you need to do is merge the Intercontinental and the United States belt, and then you're done. You'll be done doing all that. You could have one solid show, and then you get rid of NXT. SmackDown will be for those guys.
Hey, now that's an idea.
They get 2 hours. They'll get 2 hours on TV, where you don't have to pay $9.99 on the network to watch it.
How much was that?
That was $9.99.
God. I mean, if I weren't such a big wrestling fan, I would have canceled my fucking subscription just out of spite, just because of that. Like, well, you know what? Fuck you. How about that? You won't get my $9.99 next month. You fuck.
Mine cost me $0.00.
Speaking of the network, that's another news story that I mentioned it at the beginning of the show. But the growth of the network has not nearly been what they hoped it would be. They announced their most recent numbers, and it was, I think, something like 690,000, which is way, way below their projections. And they've only gained something like 60,000 subscribers since they last released their numbers in April. And even worse than that is something like 180,000 people canceled their subscriptions, which you're not supposed to be able to do, because you have to sign up for a 6-month commitment. But what people did was they signed up and as I did, and signed up to pay through PayPal, or they signed up with like a prepaid credit card or something, and they basically canceled their subscription by just not paying the bill. Mm-hmm. They didn't officially contact WWE and say, I'm canceling this. They just said, okay, PayPal, don't pay that bill anymore. And they canceled that way, which, again, they weren't supposed to be able to do, but there were people who wanted to get rid of the WWE network so badly that they found a way to break the rule to cancel the network. That can't make you feel very good.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat right now with Xbox Live. I'm canceling my Xbox Live membership. I'm just kind of really done with gaming these days. I don't even want to be online. I don't want to be dedicated to $60 a year to be online.
Yeah.
But they're having technical issues trying to find me, and I'm like, well, this is the card. I'm telling you this. This is my sign-on name and password, and you should be able to find me in your system. Why can't you just cancel? And they cancel the auto renewal. I know my auto renewal is coming up, so cancel that, so I know I don't have to pay it anymore, and then it will just fix itself. But they've just been dicking me around to the point where I'm going to have to call my credit card company and say, do not pay that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not a good thing if you're the WWE. I mean, the 6-month network, the 6-month commitment that was only really there just to keep people from ordering it for WrestleMania and then canceling it, you know, so they could get WrestleMania for $10 and then say, oh, that's all I wanted. Fuck that. But I mean, the problem is that the network hasn't been, for all those people that canceled it, the network just wasn't good enough to keep them, you know. And I mean, for people like us who are hardcore fans who are probably going to watch it no matter what, because, you know, I could fucking watch old Clash of Champions like all day long if I didn't have anything else to do. Like I'm happy with just that, or the old pay-per-views and all that shit. Like I'm the customer that they know they've already got. So I'm not going to cancel it unless something really catastrophic happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a junkie. Like, they've got me. I know I'm the guy who shows up every morning to get his fix. You know, they know they would worry about me if I wasn't there. But all those people that you know bought the show in February or March to see WrestleMania because they heard that, you know, Daniel Bryan was going to win the title, or because they thought maybe The Rock would be there, or whatever, you know, Batista. I don't think anybody saw Batista. Anybody bought the show to see Batista, but maybe somebody did. Or, you know, Brock versus Undertaker, that sort of thing. You know, they were supposed to stick around. The network was supposed to be so awesome that they would be like, you know what, maybe I'm gonna hold on to this WWE network thing. This is pretty cool. And that just didn't happen for whatever reason. You know, the casual fans just didn't think that it was worth it, and that's worrying. You know, if I were working for the WWE, that's something that would really, you know, I would be a little worried about that, because they really, really, really need this to work. Like, there's kind of no going back at this point. They said when they started the network, they said they hoped by the end of next year that it would replace their pay-per-view business, and they're not anywhere close to that. So
it does make me wonder how Simpsons World's gonna fare when they finally go up. I mean, you heard about that Simpsons World. You get all 522 episodes of The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I mean, if you think wrestling's overkill, how much you gonna pay just to watch cartoons? the same cartoon of kids that never fucking grow up.
Right. I know. It's gonna. I mean, it's not so bad when you watch one episode a week, but when you start binge watching like the whole, you know, years at a time, and you're like, wait, wow, how they're not getting any older. They've done like 3 summer vacation episodes, and the motherfuckers are still in 4th grade. Well, then, you know, you get to see the decline in quality as well. You get to see like the awesome Simpsons episodes up until about season 9 or 10, and then it's the sort of downward spiral. I don't know. I'm not a Simpsons hater, though. I still think it's a decent show. I'm not like one of these hipsters who's like, I remember when it was good.
I just wanted to end so I can finish the DVD collection.
Right.
I'd like to see an end to that thing sometime. So that goes double for you too, South Park.
Yeah, just pick a year. Just pick a year and end it so I can have my fucking collection finished. Well, anyway, why don't we, speaking, you know, I don't really have a segue for this, but I'll say maybe since The Simpsons is like a legendary TV series.
Well, seeing as the WWE is trying to Jew us out of our money, let's talk about foreigners.
That's a great segue.
Which leads me to this week, legend of the week, and we know him as the Polish Hammer. We knew him as Polish Power. He stood at about, let's see, his height was 1.73 meters, which is 5 foot 8 inches. See, they do things differently in other countries. People, they don't measure things the way we do. His build weight was 110 kilograms, that's 240 pounds, or 129 kilograms, which is 284 pounds. He was billed from Krakow, Poland. Debuted in 1968, and I'm talking about real name Josef Bernarski, and known in the wrestling world as Ivan Putski.
Yeah.
In his early life, Putski was born in Poland and migrated to the United States at a young age. He and his family arrived in Texas, where Putski began his professional wrestling career. Ivan stood 5'6" and weighed about 225 pounds in his early days. In professional wrestling, Putski won the NWA Texas Tag Team Championship with Jose Lothario. We all know who Jose is. He's the famous guy who trained Shawn Michaels. But he had won the Texas Tag Team Championships with Jose twice in 1973. Putski was a fixture on the Dallas-Fort Worth wrestling scene and was one of its most popular personalities. He was routinely the feature act at the Sportatorium. It was a wrestling-only arena in an industrial section near downtown Dallas. Putski's act consisted of being a happy-go-lucky, often aloof buffoon who would miraculously pin opponents. Putski was also introduced as a former concentration camp survivor, only adding to his sympathetic appeal to audiences of the ages.
Wow.
Yeah. In 1974, Putski worked for the American Wrestling Association, but prior to leaving the AWA, Ivan dropped most of his weight by getting into bodybuilding, which kept him really around 215, 220 pounds. Then he went over to the Worldwide Wrestling Federation and also the WWF because he would be in there still at the time. But Putski debuted in the Worldwide Wrestling Federation in 1974. While in the WWF, Putski feuded with many wrestlers, including Bruiser Brody. Yes, we have to do Bruiser some week. Stan Hansen, and we got to do Stan Hansen some week.
Totally.
And Ivan Koloff again. On June 25th, 1976, at Showdown at Shea, Putski defeated Baron Michael I can't hardly say his name. Skaluna. Baron Michael. 4 years later, on August 9th, Putski was again victorious at the event sequel, defeating Johnny Rodz. On October 22nd, 1979, Putski teamed with Tito Santana Arriba to defeat Johnny and Jerry Valiant to win the WWF World Tag Team Championship. They held the titles for about 6 months before losing them to the Wild Samoans. I believe they were probably managed by Captain Lou Albano at the time, so that's probably why they lost, because Lou was a legendary manager. Putski worked in the renamed World Wrestling Federation in the 1980s, primarily feuding with Roddy Piper and Sergeant Slaughter. He took a hiatus from wrestling in 1986, but he would turn to the independent circus, also making occasional appearances in the WWF as a jobber to the stars. So this is probably where I kind of come into his career. I'd seen him because when I seen him, it seemed like he was somebody, like he was a legendary wrestler, but he would often lose to the new breed of stars. So I never really got to see him in his heyday. Let's see. In various promotions, he began to slow his career down in 1980. In the 1980s, he won his last tag team championship in May 1981, teaming with Wahoo McDaniel to defeat Dory Funk Jr. and Larry Lane for the SWCW World Tag Team Championships. In November 1985, Randy Savage defeated Ivan Putski in the opening round of the Wrestling Classic. He returned to the WWF in 1995, and Ivan was inducted into the Hall of Fame by his son, Scott. The father and son team returned in July 1997 to defeat Jerry Lawler and Brian Christopher in tag team action on Raw is War. So, yeah, I mean, I completely forgot about that. I might have missed that one, but I would have. Yeah. I completely have no idea what the fuck they're talking about there because I must have missed it. After his run in the WWF, several promotions and his semi-retirement, Putski returned to the ring in the 1990s. In 1996, he joined International Championship Wrestling as a face. He won several matches in the company, and he was billed as a tough guy, although he never won a championship of ICW. After work for several other wrestling promotions, mostly for the independent circuit, Putski retired from full active competition in the decade of the 1990s. After his retirement from wrestling, he actually got into being in strongman competition, and Putski occasionally made appearances in the ring during the years. In 2010, Putski appeared in a reunion event called Legends Mania, and he was only interviewed. But speaking of some things that are outside the wrestling, his strongman career, aside from wrestling, Ivan Putski also competed as a strongman. He participated in the 1978 World's Strongest Man competition, finishing 8th in a field of 10 competitors. Sorry. He gained his remarkable leg strength by running up and down the stands at football stadium near his home in Austin, Texas. His son, Scott Putski, is also a professional wrestler. He had some success in both World Wrestling Federation and World Championship Wrestling. From 2002 to 2007, Putski worked as head security guard at the Jack C. Hayes High School in Buda, Texas. On January 8, 2012, Ivan Putski was inducted into the Cloverleaf Radio Hall of Fame. His finishing move, of course, the Polish Hammer, is a double axe handle to the opponent's chest. So you just basically take it in both hands and pounce you right across the damn chest. Almost as lethal as the hard punch, except he's using both of them, and bam.
Exactly.
Signature moves was the bear hug, a headlock, the scoop power slam, and vertical suplex. Nicknames he would use is Polish power and Polish pile driver. He is a two-time, like I said, NWA American Tag Team Champion with Jose Lothario and Big Time Wrestling. And he is the SCW World Tag Team Champion with Wahoo McDaniel and Southwest Championship Wrestling. And as far as that goes, that's about as many titles as he's held. He was considered PWI's Tag Team of the Year with Tito Santana in 1979. And PWI also ranked him at 170 in the top 500 wrestlers in 2003, and ranked him 92 of the 100 best tag teams of PWI's years with Tito in 2003. He's the WWF Hall of Fame, class of 1995, and he was for the Wrestling Observer, which is probably one of my favorite magazines I used to read back when I was still active in the business. I loved the Wrestling Observer. He had won the newsletter awards. One was the reader's least favorite wrestler in 1984.
There you go.
And the other one was just worst wrestler, also 1984. So.
Wow.
So no, Ivan, he didn't have a whole lot of things going on in his career, and it seemed like it was short-lived. Especially when he did commentating for the WWF, because Jesse Ventura always referred to him as Putski, or Pud, like Pudusky, Putski, instead of Putski. So, but I thought he was worth mentioning, and because if you're a wrestling fan, if I mention Polish Power, you know who I'm talking about. So
definitely.
So this week's legend, and wrap it up in a nutshell: Polish Power, Ivan Putski. And he was a hell of a wrestler. So check him out on YouTube. I'm sure there are matches up there.
Yeah, and I don't know for sure, but he might be on one or two of those shows that they have on the WWE network, like those classic Madison Square Garden cards from the 70s. They only have a few of those up in the old school section.
Yeah, that is possible. He could be on one of those. I've seen a few of them. I haven't seen him yet, or just haven't noticed him yet.
Yeah. But yeah, he was, I mean, yeah, by today's standards, he was not a good worker. He didn't have a very heavy move set, but man, he was one of those guys in the 70s, and when the WWF was really booming with Bruno, like he was a guy like Bruno or like Pedro Morales, mm-hmm. who had a big following among people who were his ethnicity. Because New York was the melting pot. There were these big immigrant communities and a really multi-ethnic city, and people, the Italians would come to the Garden to see Bruno, and the Poles would come to the Garden to see Ivan Putski, and the Puerto Ricans and the Hispanics would come to see Pedro, and that it was, and he was a huge star because of that, for that reason, because he was a hero to those people who saw someone like them. They went to the wrestling show, and there was a guy who was like them, who was from their country, who spoke their language, who had come from where they had come from, and now look at him. He's in the ring, he's wrestling in front of 20,000 people, and his finish is a fucking double axe handle, and that's all it takes. He was a hero to those people. And, it's something that, it's one of the sad things, really, about the death of the territory system, because now that everything is, at least, as far as the major promotions, like WWE is a national and international company. But back when you had smaller territories, you could have that sort of thing. You could have a territory that booked mostly in New York or in the Northeast, like the WWF, and they could have, guys get hugely over as heroes because they appealed to a particular segment of the audience. I mean, for Christ's sake, we forget Bruno Sammartino was champion for almost 8 years straight before he lost the title. And that was because these, the Italian immigrants, the working class from New York, would flood into Madison Square Garden every month to see him fight because he was their hero. And Ivan was the similar thing. He wasn't nearly as over as Bruno was, but it was the same sort of thing. Like, people would come to the show just to see him because he was their hero. And people aren't, wrestlers aren't quite heroes to people like they used to be back then. But yeah, he definitely deserves to be mentioned as a legend. I mean, there's lots of fucking legendary wrestlers. I mean, we wrestling fans like who are our age and maybe a little younger, and definitely those who are a lot younger who grew up on the internet and the Monday Night Wars and Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho and Ring of Honor and all that stuff. I mean, we learn to value work rate and guys who can work like a fucking awesome match, and I appreciate that as much as anybody. But there are guys who, by today's standards, couldn't really work that good of a match, but would have the crowd eating out of the palm of their hand. And Ivan Putski was one of those guys, and Bruno Sammartino was one of those guys, where if you compare Bruno Sammartino to Daniel Bryan, I mean, no comparison. Mm-hmm. Bruno couldn't work his way out of a paper bag compared to Daniel Bryan, but he had people eating out of the palm of his hand.
Yep, and that's all it really takes. That's always half of your match already done. If you know how to reach out to that crowd that's watching you and gain a response, or do something in the ring that's not even wrestling, but where the bad guys just going like, he's pulling my hair up, he's pulling my hair. Mm-hmm. It's all in psychology. You get half your match done, and those wrestlers don't have to do a whole lot in the ring. They don't have to go out there and pull off fancy moves, because just through their actions, through their mannerisms, through just vocalizing to the crowd, they're already over. They don't need to pull off those fancy ass moves. And I do want to take a moment to apologize, because I didn't want to compare Polish people with Jewish people when I did my segue. Because there is no comparison between Polish people and Jewish people. I apologize, because Jews are smart.
I knew there was something coming. I knew there was a punchline coming to that.
I haven't heard a good pole joke in a long time.
Back when the Polish Hammer was a big star, you could tell jokes like that. I knew there was something coming. He almost didn't when his family emigrated to the United States. They almost didn't make it, because they were one of those families that came over on one of the submarines with a screen door. Mm. So. They didn't quite. They almost didn't make it over. So anyway, yeah, Ivan Putski. He's a great legend, and definitely deserves to be mentioned. Did you have a WWE Network recommendation this week?
I do have a network recommendation. I would like to recommend to you, simply because I was talking about this match earlier with my buddy Bill Bain. He's going to be teaming up with the Maestro, and he has worked with the WWE a few times in his career. And one of those moments was Capital Punishment 2011. And you can check this out on the network. It's got Rey Mysterio on one side, John Cena on the other, and in the middle is Barack Obama dressed in a referee's outfit. and they even brought a Barack Obama impersonator, and Bill Bain, who didn't wrestle in the show, but he was one of the security guards. He was one of the Secret Service for the Obama thing. He also has played one of the acolytes for that The Undertaker beat the shit out of recently. So he's done a few side things, Bill Bain. But I wanted to mention this show because I know he's a part of it. The dark match, which you won't see, which was against, and I'll give you the results of this one. Santino Marella and Vladimir Kozlov defeated Justin Gabriel and Heath Slater. So even Heath Slater was losing back then. You had a singles match for the United States Championship. You had Dolph Ziggler with Vicky Guerrero go up against Kofi Kingston. In a singles match, you had Alex Riley. Remember when he still wrestled?
Right.
This is when he broke up with The Miz. So this is the Alex Riley versus The Miz fight. Another singles match, you have Alberto Del Rio with Ricardo Rodriguez going up against The Big Show. For the Intercontinental Championship, you have Ezekiel Jackson against Wade Barrett. Singles match, you got CM Punk against Rey Mysterio. For the World Heavyweight Championship, you have Randy Orton against Christian. Another singles match, you have Evan Bourne against Jack Swagger. And for the WWE Championship, John Cena faced off against R-Truth. So when you look at it on paper, it doesn't seem like a great show, but I wanted to recommend it because, some of my friends get to make the show. Like one of my favorite female wrestlers in the world, Casey Carlisle, ranked I think number 5 or number 7 in PWI's top 50 women wrestlers of last year. So she's making big time waves in the business. But she recently was on TV playing one of the Rosebuds.
Yeah.
So that was cool. So your recommendation, sir?
Well, mine is another old episode of Saturday Night's Main Event. I could watch these fucking things all day. And the specific one that I'm recommending is a Saturday Night's Main Event from the summer of 1990. Since we're building up to Summerslam, I'm trying to sort of look at classic summer shows. And this is Saturday Night's Main Event number 27 on the network. And it was originally aired July 28th, 1990. So this was the last Saturday Night's Main Event before SummerSlam that year, SummerSlam 1990, which in and of itself was a pretty good show. And the matches on this show, Ultimate Warrior versus Rick Rude, and if you remember your WWF history, those guys were the main event of SummerSlam that year in a steel cage match. They wrestled each other in just a regular old-fashioned match on Saturday Night's Main Event here. Also, a match that, if you remember wrestling from the early 90s in the WWF, one that really jumped off the page at me that I had actually kind of forgotten about, Demolition versus the Rockers.
Woo!
Yeah, those are two big classic tag teams. Demolition versus the Rockers, Mr. Perfect versus Tito Santana, which I believe is a rematch from the tournament final of the Intercontinental title tournament that year. Remember, Ultimate Warrior beat Hulk Hogan for the title in WrestleMania 6, and then he vacated the Intercontinental title, and they had a tournament for that over the next month or so on Superstars, which Mr. Perfect won, and the finals of that tournament was Mr. Perfect versus Tito Santana, and this match on this Saturday Night's Main Event from late July that year, I believe, is a rematch of that.
Was he Tito Santana or was El Matador by then?
No, he was still Tito. This was before. He hadn't quite gone over to El Matador. You know, he was still Tito. Although, I mean, he was one of the. Speaking of jobbers to the stars, like you just talked about Ivan Putski, that was Tito after about 1985. And then not really the main event, because on Saturday Night's Main Event it was always backwards. The big match would be the first match, and then the matches that came afterwards were sort of less important. And never more true than on this show, because the last match of the show was Kerry Von Erich, the Texas Tornado, versus Playboy Buddy Rose. That's the closing match of the show. Me too. I love Buddy Rose too, but it's like that's the last match of the show. Yes.
Remember the blowaway videos were awesome. If you've not seen the greatest way to lose weight, then you need to look at Playboy Buddy Rose's on YouTube blowaway videos.
Absolutely.
That weight will come right off, man. It worked for him.
They had that fucking disgusting shot of like all the fat that supposedly would blow off of you, and it's like just this pile of fucking goo just kind of slowly collapsing. Yeah, that was. I remember that. That was funny. So anyway, that's my recommendation. Saturday Night's Main Event from July 28th, 1990. Excellent show. Without the commercials, it's only about an hour long, so it won't do you. It won't take you too much time to watch it. And a really fun early 90s WWF show. And Doc, your recommendation is a good one too, because I remember R-Truth getting that main event run against Cena, which was I thought he did all right. I mean, he hasn't gotten anywhere near it since, but I thought he did okay working with Cena. And that was the last pay-per-view before the Summer of Punk, because the show after that was Money in the Bank, where CM Punk beat Cena for the title and then left the company. So an historic show,
and it was in our backyard, of course, fittingly.
That's
Capitol.
right.
It's down at the Verizon Center in D.C.
That's absolutely, yeah. So yeah, that good pick, good recommendation. I would suggest people go back and watch that one too. Remember what the product was like 3 years ago, when CM Punk is still there.
I like to go back and just, it's like when I get the new video game every year. It's like I know they've made it and completed it months prior to its release. But I like to go immediately into the roster and go, he's gone, he's gone, he's gone, dead, gone.
The first wrestling game that I got when I got a PlayStation, because I don't do video games like at all anymore. I don't have a console at all. But when I was about 17 or 18, I got a PlayStation 1, and I got the WWF Attitude game for it. And it came out like in early 1998. Right after the Montreal Screwjob and Bret Hart was in WCW, but Bret Hart was still in the game. So it was like you get the new WWF game, and the biggest storyline in wrestling at that time was Bret Hart getting screwed over in Montreal and jumping to WCW, and then the new game comes out, and it's Bret in the WWF still, Well, anyway, we have gone another hour and a half. We have talked wrestling more than really anybody should ever talk wrestling, and the good news is it's over. The better news is we're going to come back next week, and do it again.
That's right.
Because we just love talking about wrestling so much. We're on the road to SummerSlam. SummerSlam is going to be a big show, of course, with Cena and Brock headlining. Roman Reigns versus Randy Orton underneath. Stephanie McMahon versus Brie Bella. Who would have thought that that's like the probably in terms of heat, probably like the number 2 match on the show. And of course, Bray Wyatt and Chris Jericho, and Dolph Ziggler and Miz, which nobody gives a shit about, but might at least be a good match. So yeah, it's going to be a good show, and we're 2 weeks away from that. I think it's on the 17th. So we'll be back next week to talk about next episode of Raw, the build continuing to SummerSlam. Hopefully they'll be less obnoxious with shilling the network, unless they want to just kill it.
Got it.
Yeah, I know. They're probably going to be like, you need to mention it more.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, talk whenever you can't think of anything else to say, just mention that the network is $9.99.
Open up wide, because they're going to shove it down your throat. Next week's legend. Yes. I actually mentioned him earlier during my report, but I'm saying, the hell with it, I'm doing it anyway. We're going to be talking about Stan the Man Hansen.
Oh, yes. Awesome. Stan the Man Hansen, next week's Legend of the Week. That's going to be great.
Yep.
Good call. Good pick. All right, Doc, thank you as always for joining me, my friend. I will catch you next week to do this again.
Yes, sir. It was always a pleasure to sit here and chat wrestling with a good friend of mine, especially someone as articulate. See, I can't even get that word out. Articulate as you.
That's nice. You don't.
Y'all would sneak across my webcam and steal my words out of my mouth.
You know, it's nice to be articulate, but you don't need it to be good at talking about wrestling. I mean, Dusty Rhodes taught us that. You can be,
if you will.
You can be the opposite of articulate, baby. You can still talk about wrestling in a way that captivates the people.
You know, it really pisses me off. It seems that everybody can do a better Dusty Rhodes imitation than I can. I'm no good at that.
Well, you've got you've got Macho Man down to a fucking science. I mean, who else? You've got a couple of impressions that
I can do some Hogan and
Hogan. Yeah.
I do a little Jericho.
Yeah. Ever.
So, well, I am the Doctor, and I'm signing out.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Take care, guys.